This one's not necessarily a unsolved mystery or unsolved case. This one was under the category of truly weird and shocking. It's called The Angels of Death, The Doctors. And once I saw that name, I was like, I have to read it. I need to know more. It is begin as by Catherine Ramsland. Okay, let's get going. Children were fond of him, and he brought them sweets, and even gave them rides to the place where they would be exterminated. Joseph, I'm about to butcher this name, Mengele, the doctor in Auschwitz and the ultimate angel of death, was an anomaly. A leader in the Nazi biomedical vision, he thrived on experiments with genetic abnormalities, even surpassing Hitler at times. Wow. Mengele has come to embody the archetype of absolute evil, perhaps because he so egregiously violated his professional oath to honor and preserve life. Mengele arrived in Auschwitz on May 30th, 1943. He was 32, from a Catholic family, and had long been a Nazi enthusiast. In school, his specialty had been physical anthropology and genetics, and he was fully committed to bringing science into service of Nazi enterprise. In fact, he specifically asked to be sent to Auschwitz because of the opportunities such a place could provide for his research. In charge of the selections process, he showed up at the prisoner transports looking quite elegant and would decide at a glance each person's destiny. Whew. If anyone started trouble over being separated from a relative, he might wordlessly beat or shoot them both. He appeared to have no conscience, and he sent anyone with an imperfection, including imperfect height, right to the gas chamber. My goodness. However, he kept the twins and as many sets of doubles he could find. They were destined for his labs. Mengele enjoyed his powerful position and was completely at home with his task. To uphold the Nazi ideal of racial purification was his driving motivation. Yet no one quite knew what to expect. Even as he separated families and killed with impunity, he might step into the role of concerned physician and whimsically allowed some people to live. The power of life and death resided in him. His desire to improve the efficiency of camp as a killing machine, he taught other doctors how to give phenol injections to a long line of prisoners, quickly ending their lives. He also shot people, and by some reports, he tossed live babies in the crematoria. Oh my God, this guy is sick for real. Throughout all of this, he kept a detached, efficient demeanor and viewed himself strictly as a scientist. Okay, buddy. Mengele's great passion was his research on twins. They were weighed, measured, and compared in every way. Blood was endlessly withdrawn, and they were questioned about family histories. Some he would kill for pathological examinations, dissecting a few himself and keeping a few parts preserved. Others he might operate on without anesthesia, removing limbs or sexual organs. He even did some sex change operations. If one twin died during these experiments, then the other was no longer of use. My goodness. So he or she was simply gassed. Substances were injected into living children to see how they reacted, often damaging or killing them. It didn't matter much to Mengele. There was always more on the way. Yet, even as he was targeted them for mutilation or death, he would play with them and show them great affection. Afterward, he might walk around with their heads or pin their eyes to a bulletin board. My goodness. When I thought he said play with them, I thought they meant actually play with the kids and then, go crazy. But they meant This guy was truly sick. Good Lord. He also studied dwarves and particular types of mutilating diseases, but one odd experiment was his attempt to change eye color to blue. He'd inject the eyes of children with a chemical that had caused immense pain and even blindness, but which failed to have the desired effect. Those who worked with him thought him scientifically irresponsible and naive. Overall, Miguel was caught up with the idea of genetic cultivation of a superior race. I was just about to say that because I was like, wasn't that the whole thing about the Nazis and the Jews and that whole thing? But okay. To repeat that sentence, overall, Miguel was caught up with the idea of genetic cultivation of a superior race, and his esteemed position there at the camp fed his desire to be a god. He kept notes on all his procedures to send to his mentor, but most of them were lost. After the war, Miguel escaped Nuremberg trials and fled to South America. He died in 1979, and his remains were identified by a team of forensic anthropologists. Even so, his evil lives on in the fictions and fantasies of a cruel doctor who killed without conscience and was responsible for the destruction of many thousands of innocent people. While some doctors go into the profession precisely for power over life and death, that anyone in the healing profession would so indifferently inflict pain and destruction on those in his care is rather jarring. Unfortunately, doctors who harm are difficult to detect and stop. Some are careful, having vulnerable victims easily within reach, and others are actually protected by the medical establishment. Let's look at a recent case where an obvious sociopath got away with killing because no one bothered to listen to those who complained. In some respects, Dr. Michael Swango practiced his fiendish experiments like a contemporary Mingle. Oh wow. I assumed this was about Dr. Mingle, but looks like it's about a different guy. Oh my goodness. This is kind of crazy. I forgot. What is it called? A caption or something saying, this is too much. Just turn it off. It's too much to read. Yeah, just turn it off. Don't listen no more. Ruth Barrick was a neurosurgery patient. She'd hit her head and nearly died, but was doing well there at Ohio State University Medical Center. Dr. Michael Swango, an intern, told a nurse that he was going to check on her. The nurse thought this was strange, and when she later checked on Barrick herself, she found the woman barely breathing. Calling a code, she and the medical team managed to stabilize Barrick's vital signs, and she recovered. Then a few days later, Swango went into Barrick's room again. Another nurse checked on him several times and spotted several syringes. After nearly half an hour with the patient, Swango left. And when the nurse went back in to see Barrick, she found the woman once again in a very bad state. While she administered mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, she heard Dr. Swango come in and say, "That is so disgusting." Yet her efforts were useless. Ruth Barrick was dead, and the nurse suspected that Swango had done something to cause it. In fact, before he disappeared from the place, 5 patients died and several grew terribly ill. He had also given a spicy chicken dinner to several co-workers, all whom became ill afterward. Swango was clearly a menace. Even so, throughout his medical career, people had covered for Swango, and the same thing would happen again and again. He was allowed to get away with murder. His fellow students knew that he was unfit for a medical career and was in fact downright weird. I would agree. His fellow students knew that he was unfit, and they called him 00 Swango because where the medical care was concerned, he seemed to have a black thumb. What they didn't realize was that he truly had a license to kill. It seemed he entered the medical profession precisely as a cover for what he wanted to do to people. He had no compassion. He certainly had some bizarre ideas on what it meant to be a doctor, yet this athletic, blue-eyed blonde always managed to charm his superiors into believing him. Despite a lackluster performance, he always managed to pass through the system. It wasn't just the medical establishment either. Even his mother seemed to look the other way when he expressed an intense interest in violent deaths. She clipped newspaper articles for him, assuring herself and everyone who commented on the oddity of this interest that the information would further Michael's medical career. He was learning things. No doubt that's true, but what he was learning to do was bring about the deaths of other people. He found it exciting to walk out of the ER to inform worried patients of the death of their child, or to rush to an accident scene where bodies were twisted and torn apart. He lived for this kind of high. In retrospect, it's difficult to understand how he managed to even become a doctor, let alone practice it for almost 2 decades. In 1983, Swango graduated from Southern Illinois School of Medicine in Springfield, Illinois. And although he was a year behind his classmates for failure to complete his assignments, he served his internship at Ohio State University. But when his post was finished, it was not extended, partly because of suspicions that no one seemed to address. After he left, authorities began to investigate him for murder, but found insufficient evidence to charge him with anything. It's not easy to pin a murder on someone giving injections to patients when that's what doctors do. Swango then started to work with a team of paramedics who seemed to get along with him. Feeling comfortable, he told him his ultimate fantasy. It's like this. He said, picture a school bus crammed with kids smashing head on with a trailer truck loaded with gasoline. We're summoned. We get there in a jiffy, and just as another gasoline truck rams the bus, up in flames it goes. Kids are hurled through the air everywhere, and on telephone poles, on streets, especially along the old barbed wire fence along the road, all burning. The others, rightfully so, were put off. This guy was so sick, and they kept their distance. I would have too. Then one day, Swango brought in a box of donuts, and 4 of his fellow co-workers who partook of it got severely ill. Another time, he offered soft drinks to 2 others who also got sick. They quickly caught on to what he was doing and laid a trap. It soon became clear that Swango was poisoning them. He shrugged off their concerns, yet there was sufficient evidence from the amount of poison found in his locker and home to convict him with 6 counts of aggravated battery, for which he did less than 3 years in prison. Man, they should have put that man under the jail, especially him being a doctor. Despite that, he was accepted into several more positions in Virginia, South Dakota, New York, and Zimbabwe. All he had to do was lie, fake his credentials, adopted aliases, and misrepresent his past employment history. No one checked. And wherever he went, colleagues became ill and patients died. Each time authorities closed in, he was gone. When Swango had finally stopped by the FBI, he'd been on a roll for almost 2 decades in 7 different hospitals. In many cases, someone had seen him with a syringe, and several patients who recovered indicated that it was a blonde doctor who injected them before they lost the ability to feel or move. In 1998, he was charged with killing 5 patients in a hospital in Zimbabwe, where he had worked from 1994 to 1996. However, complications with extraditing him to Africa meant that he would not be prosecuted. Then the FBI looked into his history, and the agents estimated that he may have been responsible for directly causing well over 50 deaths. Apparently, he just liked to see what would happen. And when he did this or that to a human being, whether patient or colleague, what happened when he did this to a human being, whether patient or colleague? James Stewart, who wrote Blind Eye after spending 2 years documenting Swango's swath of death, James called him a psychopath who will never stop. If he is free, Stewart said, he will find the means and place to do it again. I totally agree. Arraigned on July 17th, 2000, he finally confessed in September and pleaded guilty to a fatally poisoning 3 patients in 93 at a New York hospital and was convicted of another murder in Ohio. In a plea deal, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The extent of his evil likely surpassed the admissions and may never be known. Swango is not alone in this type of infamy. Oh my goodness. Throughout history, there have been other doctors who killed, and the list of motives is long and complex. My goodness, I wasn't expecting us to go through a lot of doctors, but ooh. I thought it honestly would be one doctor. Similar to our story yesterday, but no, it seems like we're going through a good bit. Okay. Killers in this medical profession seem especially heinous, especially while they take an oath to do everything in their power to keep someone alive. They tend to see their patients as guinea pigs. Their motives for becoming doctors seem to be more about power, control, and to gain than about healing and helping. The victims are readily available, and it's not that difficult to cover up certain types of murders. And in a major hospital, especially if the patients are elderly or have a serious illness, what's one more injection? While nurses tend to be mercy killers, that's been true of few doctors. Some of the more mundane motives include heroism, misplaced compassion, to cover up another crime, murder by tacit consent, domestic issues. Yeah, this is insane. It says another case of domestic motives was Dr. Sam Shepard, which dominated the news of various times in the 1950s when the murder of his wife, Marilyn, occurred in the Cleveland area. To a couple years ago, he was handsome. It seems like a profile here. Handsome, athletic, and philandering. Dr. Shepard claimed that a bushy-haired intruder broke into his home, bludgeoned his pregnant wife to death, and knocked him unconscious in 2 separate incidences, all without waking his young son and the family dog in a nearby bedroom. Yeah, buddy, you ain't getting away with that. Police, judge, and jury did not believe this incredible story, and Shepard went to prison like he should have. Given the prejudicial newspaper coverage at this trial, super lawyer F. Lee Bailey won Shepard a second trial, which gave the doctor the acquittal. A sympathetic television series and movie called The Fugitive gave Dr. Shepard an additional publicity boost, and in the late 1990s, his son attempted to have the state of Ohio declare his late father innocent using the latest DNA techniques, but was unsuccessful. Many of the people involved in the original murder investigation, as well as many people in the Cleveland area where the murder occurred, believe that Shepard was very guilty of murdering his wife and that he could marry his then girlfriend. Oh my goodness. This is absolutely insane what people do. The crazy thing about all this, there's more.